Greetings, colleagues, members, friends of Jung, and fellow human beings. I am Peter Demuth, and this is Deborah Stutzman. We would like to warmly welcome you to the C.G. Jung Institute Spring Gala entitled Music, Memories, Merriment, and Mirth.
Peter and I are both members of the membership committee who are committed to helping the Institute thrive both presently and into the future. We have put the following program together with the generous help of others, including Ben Law, Danielle McMahon, Amy Ornay, Lynn Kopp, Al Wayne, Kevin Davis, and Grady Vaughn.
This gala hopes to bring us all together in the spirit of community and the experience of being alive at this moment in time.
The gala will consist of a short greeting from our president, a short two-person play, musical performances, an in memoria tribute to our deceased colleagues, and a panel presentation we have named the Meeting of the Minds. There will be a separate opportunity immediately following the pre-recorded presentation for a live Zoom gathering of all interested parties to say hello to one another in live format. That separate Zoom link will be posted in the invitational email and on Facebook, and also posted during the pre-recorded gala presentation itself.
Deborah and I sincerely hope that you enjoy the gala.
But first, a message from the Institute's president, Stephanie Buck.
Hi, and welcome. I'm Stephanie Buck, president of the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago. For the next hour or so, you will be entertained with music and other artistry by members of our Jungian family who have created this gift for our Institute community. Debbie Stutzman and Peter Demuth, along with others, have worked hard for many months to bring this to you. I know you will enjoy it, so sit back, laugh, smile, and take part in this gala event. Thank you.
Guten Tag, Freunde. A good day to you, my friends and colleagues. Today we have planned and organized a unique event honoring the most brilliant Herr Dr. Jung. My name is Marie-Louise von Franz. It is my extraordinary and distinct pleasure to introduce a rare and unprecedented event never before to have been offered to the public. We have assembled, as we think Dr. Jung would approve, an illustrious group of renowned scholars, adepts, gifted artists, spiritual leaders, and social activists, all of minds of exception, to speak in a panel discussion in an event that we have entitled A Meeting of the Minds, held at the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago, Illinois, the United States of America, on the 22nd of May in the year 2021. It is with great anticipation that I introduce to you our panelists. Philosopher Albert Camus, played by Peter Demuth, Jungian analyst. The archetypal dairy farmer, played by Dennis Merriment, Jungian analyst. Dr. Sigmund Freud, played by Al Wayne. Dr. Carl Gustav Jung, played by Lee Page. Mother Nature, played by Mary Doherty, Jungian analyst. Alchemist, author Hermes Trismegistus, played by Gus Zwick. Philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. We have just been informed that Nietzsche got to the building but forgot his mask and was denied entry. Perhaps he would be able to make it a little later. Poet, memoirist, and civil rights activist Maya Angelou, played by Beverly Cox, Jungian analyst in training. And without further ado, I turn my the program over to Albert Camus and the panel of participants.
Thank you, Marie. Thank you for that nice introduction. I am Albert Camus. Good evening. And like my fellow panelists, I have been invited here today to the C.G. Jung Institute of Chicago's Spring Gala from the collective unconscious. I was born in 1913 and died in 1960 at the age of 47 in a car accident. Neither myself or my fellow panelists exist in common time, but we are still available, like the sword Excalibur, when times beckon or the need arises for us to reappear and to contribute something to the discussion. Reading our books is fine, but having us in person is always better. I was known as an existentialist and espoused the belief that human existence is absurd. This absurdity, I felt, was born out of the confrontation between the human need to make sense of existence and the unreasonable silence of the world. You may have read some of my books, including The Plague, The Fall, and The Myth of Sisyphus, all depictions of hopelessness, isolation, and uncertainty, and with some steadfast characters thrown in. I want you to imagine, however, that Sisyphus can be happy, and that being aware of one's existence is not all drudgery. Living life to its maximum includes room for joy. Now let me introduce my fellow panelists with pleasure. The archetypal dairy farmer. We could not locate an actual dairy farmer for today's program, as they are a rare breed nowadays. So we had to look again into the archetypal realm to find such a person. I know there are lots of farm areas in Illinois, but Wisconsin seemed to be the wiser choice to search, even in the collective unconscious. Our farmer has been off the farm for many years, but like the old adage goes, once a farmer, always a farmer. I have also been told that this farmer goes by the nickname Mr. Packer Fan. Welcome, Mr. Packer Fan, archetypal farmer.
So glad to be here.
Our next renowned guest, Dr. Sigmund Freud, born in 1856 and died in 1938, Australian psychiatrist and inventor of psychoanalysis. His most noted works include The Interpretation of Dreams, The Psychopathology of Everyday Life, 3 Studies on Sexuality, and Future of an Illusion. Divided the psyche into 3 parts, the id, the ego, and the superego. While he admitted to the likelihood that there were psychic vestiges that were passed from human to human, he ultimately differed from Jung in that he believed that everything in the unconscious was first in sense, and that it had either been forgotten or repressed. Freud wanted so much to leave his mark, just like Copernicus had shown that the earth is not the center of the universe. Freud claimed to have proven that the conscious mind, or the ego self, is not the master in its own house. Welcome, Dr. Freud.
Dankeschön, Albert.
Dr. Carl Gustav Jung, Swiss psychiatrist and therapist, once a colleague of Freud's, but not a disciple, as some have suggested, provided Freud with the scientific evidence that his work needed through the work association that proved that the unconscious actually existed. His works are numerous, but the most accessible are Man and His Symbols and his autobiography entitled Memories, Dreams, and Reflections. Jung's work with a myriad of ideas from mythology, religion, and philosophy helped him to posit a universal unconscious, which went beyond Freud's idea of the personal unconscious. Jung called the universal concept a sort of Alexandrian library, if you will, that is shared by all human beings, the collective unconscious. His theories are closely linked with archetypes, complexes, and attention of the opposites. Welcome, Dr. Jung.
Thank you very much.
Mother Nature. First time I've met Mother Nature, although I've been aware of her presence. Mother Nature, sometimes known as Mother Earth or Earth Mother, is the personification of nature that focuses on the life-giving and nurturing aspects of life in all of its abundance. She does this by embodying nature in the form of the mother. Nature, personified as a woman, was considered the guiding source and controlling face of creation. One of the earliest references to Mother Nature comes from the goddess Gaia, the basis of the root word geo, meaning earth. Gaia gave birth to her husband, Uranus, or sky, and Pontus, sea. Sky, earth, and sea give way to the whole of creation. Welcome, Mother Nature.
I'm so glad to be with you, and I'm so glad you finally recognized me to your table.
We'll welcome you back again, I'm sure. Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes Trismegistus is the patriarch of natural mysticism and alchemy. I believe you existed in the 3rd century. You were also known as Mercurius, and some scholars have determined that you are synonymous with the Egyptian pharaoh Thoth, the god of writing and magic, and the inventor of the hieroglyphic script. Fellow and subsequent alchemists saw you as their Moses, who handed down the divine commandments of their art embodied in the Emerald Tablet, which were thought to be found on Moses's grave. Welcome, Hermes. Thank you for coming back to us from so long ago.
Pax Domino.
Nietzsche. Friedrich Nietzsche was born on October 15th, 1844, and grew up in the town of Rocken near Leipzig. Since his father was a pastor, Nietzsche received a scholarship to study at the internationally recognized monastery school, the Schufenpforte. While studying there, he befriended many great thinkers. He became proficient in Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Italian, and French. He found time to also compose poetry and music. In 1864, he began studying theology and philology at the University of Bonn, and he had hoped to become a minister, but he lost his faith. He came to the conclusion that if you wish to strive for peace of soul and pleasure, then believe. If you wish to be a devotee of the truth, then inquire. At age 24, Nietzsche became the youngest professor in the 400-year history of the University of Basel and held the prestigious chair of classical philology. It is a maximum in Nietzschean philosophy that suffering, mistrust, self-loathing, and rejection of all comforting superstitions is a goal towards authenticity. We will suffer, but knowing that there is no light at the end of the tunnel, our suffering will confer a certain kind of dignity that makes us worthy of ourselves. Nietzsche died in 1900 at the age of 55 after a breakdown attributed to atypical general paralysis caused by dormant tertiary syphilis. Welcome, Friedrich Nietzsche, to our panel. Last but not least, Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou was born Marguerite, excuse me. I'm not really good on my English. I'm still practicing. French is my language. Maya Angelou was born Marguerite Annie Johnson in St. Louis on April 4th, 1928. She was the second child of Bailey Johnson, a doorman and Navy dietitian, and Vivian Baxter Johnson, a nurse and card dealer. Angelou's older brother Bailey is credited with giving her her nickname, Maya, derived from Mai or Maya, sister. Maya Angelou was raped by her mother's boyfriend when she was 8. The man was arrested and then released after only 4 days, only to be murdered shortly thereafter. Angelou became mute for almost 5 years, believing that it had been her voice that had killed this man. It was during this 5-year period where Angelou developed her extraordinary memory, her love for books and literature, and her ability to listen and observe the world around her. Maya attended the California Labor School and became the first Black female streetcar conductor in San Francisco. At age 17, she gave birth to her only child, Clyde, who later changed his name to Guy Johnson. After a series of occupations as a young adult, including fry cook, sex worker, nightclub singer, a cast member in the musical Porgy and Bess, coordinator for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and journalist in Egypt and Ghana during the colonization of Africa, she went on to become an actor, writer, poet, director, and producer of plays, movies, and public television. She was also in the civil rights movement and worked with Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. During her lifetime, she received many awards and honors, including being the face on a US postage stamp and receiving the Presidential Medal of Honor. Her most beloved book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, was published in 1969. One of her most noteworthy quotes says, "We delight in the beauty of the butterfly, but rarely admit the changes it has gone through to achieve its beauty." She died on May 28, 2014. Welcome, Maya, to our panel.
Thank you very much. My pleasure, Albert.
Okay, we have panels to ask questions. So Mother Nature, since you've been around maybe longer than all of us, we're going to begin with you. If I may ask, what pisses you off most right now about how people are treating you?
Well, first of all, my name is Mother Nature, not Mother Earth. Mother Earth is usually paired with Father Sky. This makes him someone to look up to, and me something to walk on. Not that I'm pissed off about this arrangement, but it does not represent who I am. It also sets up misconceptions about how to treat me. It seems Mother Earth is there to make use of, to suit one's own convenience. She is condemned to passively receive the treatment of others with no consequences for their action. Just look at how people farm me, build on me, excavate me, and dump in my streams, rivers, and oceans, and at the same time take vital liquids from my depths and use them to poison my atmosphere. It's disgraceful.
Mother Nature, I have one more question for you. This is a question I think we all think about. Are you hopeful that human beings can really wake up and be responsible?
Well, Mr. Camus, I'm not sure about that. What I know is when people ignore me, Mother Nature pushes back. People notice me when I take action. When the weather patterns shift and I decide to freeze out the folks in Texas, cause drought for farmers in the Midwest, or burn up California hills and houses. Yeah, that was a good one. Then they notice, all right. Then, of course, they accuse Mother Nature of being unreliable and ill-tempered. But if people begin to see Mother Nature with respect, their perspectives can change. They can begin to see some of their choices make a terrible impact on both Mother Earth and Father Sky. It seems to me that folks are finally realizing that I'm someone to reckon with. At least President Biden is stepping in that direction, as someone they need to take care of if they want me to take care of them. There are a few good examples like Lake Erie. Folks changed their tunes with me, and now I provide them with a beautiful lake. I'm sure there are other examples, but I can't think of any right now. So tonight I'm here to invite you to change your attitude toward Mother Nature. Embrace me with respect and tenderness, and you will be rewarded for your actions. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Mother Nature. I hope that the people in the audience do take heed of what you just said. It's very important.
Be nice to your shadow. Shadow is your friend.
What you see in everybody else is yours in the end. So stop your squawking, let your fingers do the walking, and take a look. It's all in our pose. We've got Freud, Jung, and Adler. Jung is best of all. Freud was too sexy and Adler was too small. Come on, join our club. The small fee is the rub, but you never get rooked. We've got a hell of a lot of folks. Welcome to our library, can see it in your face. All the knowledge you could want is waiting at the gate. We've got all the writings on the soul to individuate. What's the sin? You can only win. Christ, we even let the human in. Self is a center, circumference around the ego would like you to think that it makes all the sounds. Shut up all the noise and come on, girls and boys, to a library nook and read all of the books. Please read all of the books. We got a hell of a lot of books. So it's all in our books. So many books, the red book too.
The next panelist I'd like to talk to is Hermes Trismegistus. Hermes, wow, existed in the 3rd century. I think if I'm counting right, that's 17 centuries ago. I'd like to ask you the following question. What's all this fuss about alchemy with the Jungians? Isn't it just outdated science, lead into gold? Gee whiz, come on now. Are there really any secrets you can enlighten us with?
Well, thank you, Alberto, for asking me that. First of all, I just want to apologize for my sore mystica peristalsis. She couldn't make it today due to a severe case of indigestion. Well, you know how boomer Catholics still complain about the Mass not being said in Latin? It adds mystery and non-comprehension. Jungians are a lot like that. They love the old and the way things were done before. Hell, some of them still insist on using a quill instead of a Mac. And they seem to be enamored with the gibberish quality of alchemical talk. A thing can mean something and its opposite, for Christ's sake, pun intended here. Try and wrap your mind around that. That's why they call me Hermes after all. Screw them if they can't take a joke. Hey, alchemy operated in the background of human consciousness for centuries without ever really reaching its goal. Well, there was that Flamel character that Harry Potter ran into in the first book, but let me tell you, he was an exception to the rule. But seriously, or as serious as I get, cause and effect, subject versus object, inductive reasoning, these are all frustrated by alchemical understanding. That's what they love about it. Alchemical language is a mode of therapy. It is therapeutic.
Thank you, Hermes. I have one more question. When I first asked you to be on this panel, you sent me some ideas about what I might ask you. Unfortunately, my dog ate up the paper and I only see half of the question here, but I think it's something like, do you have anything useful to offer us?
Yes, about today. What's going on today? You know, one of the first dictums in the Emerald Tablet, that one I brought from Moses's tomb, is so as above, so as below. If that is really true, then the above must really be screwed up at the moment because the below sure sucks the big one. But hey, We alchemists love the prima materia as the starting point. So the shittier things are, the better we like it. I guess we're a lot like pigs that way. Alchemy provides such rich imagery and language regarding, let's call it an elemental psychology. Fire, calcinatio, water, solutio, earth, coagulatio, air, sublimatio, separation, separatio, unification or combination, connunctio. By the way, there's that Latin again, sounds more impressive, doesn't it? And above all, mysterious. We could imagine that the self operates through these principles in both an inner and outer manner. The self in an inner manner, the alchemical self, that's me in case you missed it, is dream maker. And you can approach dreams as recipes attempting to move you towards individuation. In an outer manner, life events can be approached symbolically, leading to the ability to live a symbolic life. And that's a big thing for you Jungians. Let's use current events with the coronavirus. And boy, aren't you tired of hearing that word? And social unrest as an example. The rage and anger of racial protests can be seen as a calcinatio process, literally burning down old structures in order to create new ways of being. Have you seen Minnesota recently? The virus itself carries solutio properties as it's described as washing through the population, dissolving hidden stratifications and bringing to light inequalities as the poor and racial groups are unequally affected. Social distancing has provided a separatio in order to allow for a new sublimatio as we're having to find new values and spiritual approaches to make things of this devastating experience. Coagulations are appearing as new laws and rules are being created as people are needing to live differently. The world cannot go back to the way it was. I guess we are ever awaiting a connunctio as society and the world are in process of being reordered. But hey, it's the process, not the goal that matters. The goal, whether it be gold or the stone or the self, is just there as an impetus to do the work. Thus, I have spoken.
Hermes, I tell you, no disrespect to the other panelists, but I think we need to do a Charlie Rose thing next time, just 2 chairs and a table. I think you got a lot to say. Thank you.
Alberto.
Our next panelist, the archetypal dairy farmer. I have a question for you, Mr. Dairy Farmer. For those of us who may not know what is on your head, would you be willing to explain to us what it is?
I sure can. I think I got to lighten things up a little bit after what Hermes Tris just laid on us. Yeah, this is the famous cheese head that Packer fans wear to the Packer games. I wore this when I went out to give a presentation on spirit animals at the International Conference on the Association for the Study of Dreams. And on the night before, the final day, they have a dream ball. And you get your 2 minutes of fame walking across the stage. And I wore my cheese head and this shirt. It says, when you say moo, you said it all. And I don't think anybody knew what the heck I was wearing. But when I left for the airport, I was on a bus, had my hat in a plastic bag, and there was a guy sitting across from me from Chicago. And he said, "Are you from Wisconsin?" He turned out to be a Bears fan. He knew what I was wearing. So, Wisconsin is a dairy state. We don't produce as much milk as California, but most of our milk goes into making cheese. And of course, cheese is gold. So when we see the Packers, their golden helmet, we know that that represents our cheese. And the Packers colors, I happen to have my favorite Packers sweatshirt here, are green and gold. And every dairy farmer knows that that green represents alfalfa. Alfalfa is a legume, Therefore, it's rich in protein, cow's favorite feed. That's how the milk has so much protein in it. So when we go to the Badger games at University of Wisconsin-Madison, watching a football game, the fifth quarter is one of our favorite times. UW band likes to play a song based on the old Budweiser beer song. When you say Budweiser, you said it all. So when we play it in Wisconsin, the chant is when you say Wisconsin, you've said it all. But to take it to another level, a good Jungian archetypal level, when you say moo, you have said it all. Now, this comes from one of my favorite books on the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. It's a translation by David Hinton. And in the definition section, this is what it says about mu. I presume that is pronounced mu. It says the philosophy of Tao embodies a cosmology rooted in that most primal and wondrous presence, Earth's mysterious generative force. This relates to Mother Nature, I think, or this is venerated as the Great Mother. She continuously gives birth to all creation, and like natural process which she represents, she also takes life and regenerates it in an unending cycle of life, death, and rebirth. In the Tao Te Ching, this awesome generative force appears most explicitly in Lao Tzu's recurring reference to the female principle in a variety of manifestations: mother, female, feminine, yielding, source, origin, etc. But in the end, it is everywhere in the Tao Te Ching, for it is nothing other than Tao itself. So when you say mu, you have indeed said it all, or at least you said the Tao. So to complete the picture, I have to show you the back of my shirt. And this is for the Bears fans. Can you see it? All right.
Mr. Archetypal Dairy Farmer, that was a pretty Hillmanian image that you just showed us. Do you think that there's any hope for a rapprochement between Packer and Bears fans?
Boy, this will be difficult. You know what? I read a book some time ago by William Cronin called Nature's Metropolis, Chicago and the Great West. And it really talks about Chicago's yang to the Midwest yin. So the Midwest has the largest amount of grade AAA soil in the world. So all that wheat, corn, and soybeans got shipped by rail to the great rail center in Chicago, turned into products, and then sent out on rail and by lakes to the rest of the world. And the pigs and the hogs were sent by rail to those infamous stockyards in Chicago. We can still smell it when we go down there. And McCormick made the farm implements to help harvest this great abundance in the Midwest. So after I read that book, I didn't hate the Bears fans so much. And then when I started attending meetings and going down to Chicago and met some of the Jungian analysts that were Bears fans, I thought, you know, these are some rather decent people after all. So to help bring about a rapprochement, I suggest that we eat some good cheese, have some brats, and we have to drink, of course, some good beer. So this is the archetypal Jungian Midwest beer. I don't know if you can see it, but it's one of my favorite microbrews in Wisconsin, 2 women, brewed in Little Switzerland, New Glarus, that's south of Madison. And this is what it says on the label on the side. It says, 4,000 years before Christ, Sumerian women created the divine drink of beer. Viking women brewed in Norse society. European alewives were so successful as cottage brewers, they were taxed. Artisanal women lost the domination of the daily ritual of brewing during the Industrial Revolution. Today's brewing trade is controlled by men. The collaboration of two craft companies, both led by women, New Glarus Brewing and Weimar Malting, is unique. You hold the result: two women, a classic country lager, a tempting and graceful classic lager found only in Wisconsin. Now, they couldn't keep up brewing enough of this beer to supply the Chicago market, so they're limiting it now just to Wisconsin. So to you Illinois people, Schadenfreude. So in the interest of bringing some kind of respect between Wisconsin, Packers and Bears fans, I hoist a can of two women beer. Prost.
Thank you, Mr. Archetypal Dairy Farmer. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, greetings. My name is Alexander Wayne. Behind me is one of Vienna's best known coffee houses, Cafe Landsmann. Many notable artists, composers, and intellectuals gather here to hold court. Among those famous characters is one Sigmund Freud. We are about to present a brief sketch about a meeting between a 56-year-old Freud and a 37-year-old Carl Jung. The year is 1912, and it is a beautiful spring day in Vienna. Carl and Sigmund have just completed a walk on the famous Ringstrasse, the street that circles the city core. They decided to stop for refreshments at Cafe Landsmann. Of course, the meeting, as portrayed here, is between these two pioneering giants of psychoanalysis, is purely fictional. There was, however, as you probably know, a split between Jung and Freud as their visions evolved and diverged. I have attempted to dramatize this parting of the ways. And so, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we present Breach on the Ringstrasse.
Carl, this is one of my favorite haunts. The coffee and pastries are excellent. You can't experience Vienna without Landmann's. It is perfect end to my walk around the Ringstrasse.
You walk this circle every morning, Sigmund?
Yeah, it inspires me to assemble the direction of my thoughts.
Indeed. In what directions are these thoughts going?
Carl, we have known each other long enough that you should know the answer.
Just like this street, sometimes thoughts run in circles. They come back to where they started, or they go forward.
What are you trying to say, Carl?
Just musing. Nur eine Grübelei must be my unconscious trying to say something I dreamt about that I can't remember.
Speaking of dreams, do you recall our voyage to New York with how we analyzed each other's dreams?
how could I forget? On the ship, you ruminated in your dream about snakes and horses as sexual objects. Frankly, I think it was the French onion soup giving you that gas that night.
Amusing. Funny you should remember that night's soup. Remember how you fussed my dream back then? Something about the shadow, der Schatten. I should have asked what you meant by the shadow. It sounds nefarious. You seem to be developing a new vocabulary, Carl.
Just like any living language, Sigmund, new words are constantly being added as we discover new aspects of what we study. I conceive the shadow as repressed aspects of self that we don't like. An example would be a quick temper. We repress or say we control it, but we always remain in the unconscious.
It sounds like a rehash of my id concept.
No, Sigmund. The shadow is much broader. Your id merely describes immediate and basic urges. These urges could be bad or good. And yes, the same mechanism is relegated to the unconscious happens, but you can see there is a qualitative difference.
But of course, we live in a society where sexuality is repressed and even thought of as evil by some religions. Come now, Carl, can't you see what is fundamental here? Human sexuality is really driving your so-called shadow. I am sure your shadow manifests itself in your dreams, while my id makes vivid appearances in my dreams.
What about your dreams, Sigmund? What is going on inside that unrepressed sleep mind? Seriously, im Ernst, tell me.
Lately, I have been having bizarre, recurring, and vivid dreams. Just last night, I found myself in a library with huge stacks of books. Suddenly, the stack before me started to teeter and slowly started to fall upon me. I was paralyzed mid-fear, desperately trying to run, but could not. As it fell, the weight of the books, the weight of the stack prevented any movement. As I lay there helpless, one of the open books started to ooze out its words like venom from a ruptured serpent.
Most fascinating. What words? Please go on.
The words, yes, they came at me as to inflict mortal wounds, but I cannot remember what those words were.
You need Hermes to intercede as the messenger delivering the contents of the unconscious to the conscious mind.
Hermes, as I recall, is also the trickster in mythology, and he often leads his victims astray. Have you succumbed to Hermes, Carl?
My Hermes is a visionary, a divine messenger, the communicator, not the trickster.
But how would you then interpret this walking dream, Carl?
I would need to know those words you can't remember. The falling objects and your inability to escape, of course, is a common theme denoting fear, rejection, and frustration with some current event in your life. But the words are critical to the analysis. Snakes, of course, are symbols of the libido. But the venom, that perplexes me without knowing the words.
Yeah, this might be important. The words, that is. Maybe word association or hypnosis would help unlock them from my unconscious.
I don't have my word association chart here, but let us try a little informal session.
Very well. Proceed.
Okay, ideal.
Archetype,
Id.
shadow,
Coincidence.
synchronicity,
Male.
animus,
Female.
anima.
Obviously, we do not need to continue any further. Clever you, Sigmund. I am onto your ruse with the dream. You have to read my book. You have had to read my book, Psychology of the Unconscious, to use all these associative terms. And of course, you do not approve.
Yes, Carlo. I did read your book, and yes, I do not approve. But there is something that bothers me more. After all, we have been through together over these last 6 years, lecturing in America, me sponsoring you with the International Psychological Association. I expected you to carry on our analytical psychology movement. You have betrayed me, Carl. You betrayed our mission. Du hast unsere Mission verraten.
Our mission? You mean your mission? It's all about you, Sigmund. It's always about you. Don't you think I might have an original thought?
Original. Ha! Archetypes. Collective unconsciousness. Anima, animus. Mythology, shadow, synchronicity. Where did you come up with all this preposterous diatribe? Was it Christian fairy tales stuck in your unconscious that denies the libido? Is that what's frustrating you?
Very well, your preoccupation with the libido, or let's call it for what it is, sex. I'm sure you invented these portentous terms just to lure unsuspecting females to that famous couch of yours. Did you cure their hysteria? Did you satisfy their lust?
You should talk, Carlo. Does your wife Emma know about Sabina or Tony Wolf? No, don't worry. I won't tell, but don't lecture me about affairs.
I am faithful in spirit, but let us tone this down a bit. I apologize if I wounded your pride, but my shadow got the best of me.
Yes, let's leave superstitions to the clerics and masses. I suppose we really can't deny our early influences.
Sigmund, maybe it's time for us to part.
Yes, Carlo, here is where we will part. With you proceeding north to Zurich and me south to the sanctuary of my office.
Auf Wiedersehen, then, Sigmund.
Moving on to Dr. Sigmund Freud. A few questions for you, sir. Thank you for being part of our panel. In kind of preparing for my question to you, I found that you have some association, or did have some association, with the painter Salvador Dali. Did he influence you, or did you influence him?
Yeah, before I answer that question, I just want to tell you why I lost my German accent.
Ah.
As you probably know, you Jungians, that is, Dr. Jung and myself traveled over to New York at some point in the early 20th century. And that American accent was so infectious that it just stuck into my unconscious. And here I am talking like an American. So in answer to the question, however, there's no doubt that Dali was influenced by me, because first of all, he was a pretty young man when he came to visit me in 1938 in London. And he mentioned that, well, he had read my book, the interpretation of dreams. And he also had a great interest in the unconscious and dreams and sexuality, certainly a man of my own interests. He also had a very big ego. Consummate showman. He was a brand in his own right, an icon. I would have thought that he might have given one of our ex-presidents some instructions on that. In any event, he actually illustrated dreams, something that we all talk about, but he actually painted those dreams. And one of his most famous paintings, The Persistence of Memory, I wish I could pull it up on the screen here, but I tried to do that before I can't. But I think you might be familiar with it. It shows a clock that's kind of dripping over a table and some distant things, very surrealistic. And that had a lot of meanings to it. Another work that he did, which was inspired by me actually, was the picture of, I don't know what the name of the picture was, but it was a human torso with a bunch of drawers that were sticking out of that, open drawers that were sticking out of that torso. Why do I think that I influenced him on that? Well, I once told him that the human body is full of secret drawers that only a psychoanalyst is capable of opening. So what do you think? Had to be me influencing him. In any event, he didn't come to me to be analyzed at all. He just wanted to meet me because apparently at this stage of our lives, I became kind of the patron saint of all the surrealist painters. So he had to come to Mecca to see me, okay? In any event, although I didn't really analyze him, I could sense from what he had told me that he had an Oedipus complex. And that's something I invented. In any event, his mother had died when he was only 16, and he was devastated by that. And he told me this was something that just influenced him all his life. It was a travesty. So it was one of the reasons why he went in the direction he did. It was an early influence, and of course, I was a great influence as well.
Dr. Freud, you have influenced a lot of people around the world. We even have our own Freud here in France called Jacques Lacan, but I'm not going to ask you about him. You may have some thoughts about him, but I do have one more question. There's some report that the composer Gustav Mahler sought you out. And I know that nowadays we have things called confidentiality, but in your day, I don't think that was such a big deal. What were his issues, and were you able to help him?
Well, it's not a big deal because we're both dead, so
Okay.
It doesn't matter. But yes, he did come to me once, only once. And the reason he came was he was very distraught because his wife, Alma, had taken up with one Walter Gropius, who was a young architect, the founder of the Bauhaus movement in Germany. And he thought that he was losing his wife to this young man. And I could sense he was a very troubled man. And Gustav was probably one of the most intense people I have ever met. I mean, he was a very small, slight type of man, and he was had quite a reputation for being a tyrant on the podium, in the orchestral pit. The artists were just terrified of him, but they also respected him greatly. in any event, we had a walk. We took a walk around town, maybe 4 hours, and he was very open about his past life and such. And here I surmised that there was something very much in common with Mr. Dali. Gustav indeed had an Oedipus complex also. It appears as though his mother, who he adored and died, of course, when Alma came on the scene, she became the mother figure. Okay, so when she was leaving the scene, he was losing his mother once again. Well, after talking this whole thing over and such, I think it did help him, because ostensibly Mahler went back to Alma, and they kind of reconciled, not entirely, but at least is, enough to where he had a fairly, shall I say, happy demise, if there is such a thing. I guess when they put morphine into you just about when you're ready to die, that would be a happy ending, but that did happen. Another thing that troubled Mahler was the number 9. Well, if you know anything about music, you'll know that Beethoven died soon after he wrote his 9th symphony, as did Bruckner, as did Ralph Vaughan Williams, as did Dvorak. Well, guess what? He was in the process at that particular time of completing his 9th symphony. And what did that foretell? It foretold that he was not long for this earth. Mahler tried to cheat that issue by composing another symphonic piece that was not labeled as a number, but by name. I believe it was the Song of the Earth. That is very famous. He did finish that. So in a way, he cheated that number 9 in as much as it was the 10th symphony, and then he went on to try to start to compose the 11th one, which was which he died. He never finished. So, but he was I think one of my more interesting interactions.
Dr. Freud, thank you for being part of our panel, and thank you for your contributions to humanity. Appreciate it. Thank you. I would like to talk with Dr. Jung.
Yeah.
Dr. Jung, I know you may have to leave, but
I have time for you.
All right. I did not receive any questions that you wanted me to ask you ahead of time, but I do have one question, and then I would just like you to say whatever you'd like to say.
All right.
My question is, after your falling out, you seem to have held Freud in some respect. You seem, even though after you fell out, you always seem to say respectful things about him. What did you most admire about Freud?
I admired that he was a great intellect. He started the movement. We would not be where we are today without Sigmund Freud. He's a very important personality, and I knew him well. I spent many times with Sigmund over beer and wine and cafe, and he was a very, very deep soul. Not always right, as I can assure you, but a very important intellect.
Do you remember the first time you met him? Do you have any memories of the first time you met him?
It was just in passing at a conference. I talked with him just briefly. I do not remember all of the aspects of it. Okay.
Well, we're going to come back to you, Dr. Jung, because people may have a question for you. We're going to go to the last panelist, and we're going to question her. Then we may hear back from you at that point. Good evening, colleagues. Happy spring. Happy end of COVID-19, hopefully. I'd like to do 2 songs off of my new album. One goes out to Gus and Barbara called It's Beautiful, So Beautiful. And the second one is called Life, goes out to John Giannini. And so I'm taking it slow, no need to hurry and nowhere to go. I'm just taking my time, not standing in line, feeling so free. And so the flowers will bloom, frogs will croak, and lovers swoon. And I'm just taking it in, 'cause everything has a song to sing, and it's so beautiful. And so I'm letting it go, all of these worries and all of these woes. I'm just like a bird in flight, I'm drifting along on a quiet night. And so there's nothing to show, and nothing to learn, and nothing to know. We're all just living a dream, reality mixed with make-believe, and it's so beautiful. Nothing to choose, nothing to win, and nothing to lose. We're all just part of the whole, classic music and rock and roll. And so I'm fully awake, I'm ready to share, I'm not on the take. I'm feeling so carefree, just like the Buddha in the Bodhi tree, and it's so beautiful. And so there's nothing to choose, nothing to win, and nothing to lose. We're all just part of the whole, classic music and rock and roll. And so I'm fully awake, I'm ready to share, I'm not on the take. I'm feeling so carefree, just like Buddha in the Bodhi tree, and it's so beautiful. So beautiful, so beautiful, so beautiful. Sitting in the moonlight, staring at the stars, recalling when I feasted and remembering when I've starved, and all the thoughts that fill my head wish to stake a claim. Some will bring a smile or two, and some will cause me pain. I'm walking on the lakeshore path, but I'm hearing the ocean's waves. I'm learning to be frugal while detaching from what I crave. And all the times I've wondered why, the who, the what, and where, I've
jumping over obstacles and facing every dare. But life is full of ups and downs. Some days you laugh, some days you frown. From the start to the finish line, life keeps changing all the time. Sitting on the front porch chair, waving to passers-by, remembering of the good old days, sure to bring a sigh. But experiencing these aching joints and a mirror that doesn't lie. So glad I did the things I did, can't say I didn't try. But if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you thought you had it figured out, but there's trouble at the helm, just keep on breathing in and out and taming the monkey mind. The growing peace within your heart is aging just like wine. But life is full of ups and downs. Some days you laugh, some days you frown. From one second to the next, life's a puzzle more or less.
I'd like to move on to Maya Angelou. Welcome, Maya Angelou. I have a couple questions for you. I noticed that you have had a full life, traveling to many cities and countries, working in diverse places from nightclubs to universities. And as you look back, what do you think about all the factions based on race, gender, class, or anything else that might have caught your eye over the years?
Thank you. I think this is answered well in one of my poems. So this is titled The Human Family. I note the obvious differences in the human family. Some of us are serious, some thrive on comedy. Some declare their lives are lived as true profundity, and others claim they really live the real reality. The variety of our skin tones can confuse, bemuse, delight. Brown and pink and beige and purple, tan and blue and white. I've sailed upon the 7 seas and stopped in every land. I've seen the wonders of the world, not yet one common man. I know 10,000 women called Jane and Mary Jane, but I've not seen any two who really were the same. Mirror twins are different, although their features jibe, and lovers think quite different thoughts while lying side by side. We love and lose in China. We weep on England's moors and laugh and moan in Guinea and thrive on Spanish shores. We seek success in Finland, are born and die in Maine. In minor ways we differ. In major, we're the same. I note the obvious differences between each sort and type, but we are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike. We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike.
Thank you, Maya. I want
Welcome.
you to know I've been a big fan from the distance. I've read some of your stuff. You know, I think of a quote sometimes by Rudyard Kipling that you may relate to. He used to say in the first line of his poem, says, if you can keep your head about you when all around you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. And I think that during your lifetime, you've been both praised and criticized for telling the truth. What's it like to be a truth teller?
That's a really good question. It feels good. It feels good to be able to take the time, reach deeply within myself and tap into my experiences. And I've had many, many experiences, all sorts of things. Yeah. And it just feels alive. It feels authentic. It's perfect. And I'd like to read one more poem for you, if you don't mind.
Please.
This one is Caged Bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names his sky his own. But a cage bird stands on the grave of dreams. His shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The cage bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the cage bird sings of freedom.
Thank you, Miss Angelou. Thank you.
Welcome.
I understand that Nietzsche is almost back but he's not able to join us quite yet. But I want to let you know the question I'm going to ask him when he does arrive. I'm going to ask Nietzsche, is God dead? And I think we'll all be interested in hearing what he has to say.
There cannot be a God, because if there were one, I could not believe that I was, not he. Ich würde nur an einen Gott glauben, der tanzen kann. I would only believe in God that knows how to dance. But I shall tell you that I'm not a madman, but a wise man who lit a lantern in the bright morning hours, ran to the marketplace and cried incessantly, I see God, I see God. As many of those who do not believe in God were standing around me just then, brought much laughter. Abandon the God, I cried. I shall tell you, we have killed him. You and I. All of us are murderers. God is tot. God is dead. God reminds that, and we have killed him. How shall we confront ourselves, the murderers of all murderers? What was the holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives? Who will wipe our blood of us? What water is there for us to clean ourselves? What festivals of atonement, what sacred games shall we have invent? Is not the greatness of his deed too great for us? Must we ourselves not become gods simply to appear worthy of it? God is dead. But given the way of man, there will be many still encased for thousands of years in which his shadow will be shown. That is all I have to say.
I'm counting to infinity, an unlikely possibility, I know. But as I hold my place in line, a link along the chain of time I'll show. That what exists now has always been here. And what we're made of, it won't disappear. I'm sorting through my daily thoughts, dealing with the shoulds and oughts to find a phoenix deep inside myself, a bridge between what's thought and felt combined. An unborn child is aging and already old. And the dead will again be youthful and bold. We are a solid, a liquid, or a gas. The ego is the only part of us to pass. Feel the fire as it transforms the past. We are a solid, a liquid, or a gas. And I'm dealing with uncertainty, but it's not a disability, you see. It's only my anxiety anxiety to grasp the things I cannot see or know. Reaching down and I'm touching the ground. Reaching high and I'm touching the sky. To pass. Feel the fire as it dissolves the past. We are a solid, a liquid, or a gas. And I'm counting to infinity, an unlikely possibility, I know. But as I hold my place in line, a link along the chain of time I'll show. That what exists now has always been here. And what we're made of, it won't disappear.
I'm going to go through the panelists. I'm going to ask each of you. We have to keep this short, even though this is a non-commercial event. We do have to. We have a time limitation to some extent. I'd like to ask each of you to think about a question you might want to ask one of the other panelists. One question each of one person, and I'm going to start with the beginning of Mr. Archetypal Dairy Farmers. Is there any question you would like to ask anybody on the panel?
Yes, I know the Jungians honor Isis as a sacred cow. And my question is to Dr. Freud is, are there any cows in the id?
That's a good question. I think it depends upon where you're at in the world. If you're in India, that might actually be the case. Whereas if you're up in Greenland, I don't think they would care.
So in other words, you're saying that they're there in the id, but it all depends on where you are culturally, whether they're prominent or not. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Freud. Dr. Freud, Dr. Freud, do you have a question you would like to ask anybody on any of the panels?
Yes, Hermes. The question is, we talk about alchemy, but in fact, it does occur today in a real sense. Back in Bern and other places where they have these high speed or high energy machines that can actually transmute matter. I'm just wondering, Hermes, are you aware of that?
Yes, thank you for asking that. Actually, there was an experiment at Harvard Labs in the 60s where they, for the first time, they wanted to prove alchemy that a isotope of lead was transformed into a few grains of gold. And so the atomic physicists always have my science at heart.
Huh. Thank you. Moving right along, Dr. Jung, it's your chance. Would you like to ask a question of anybody on the panel?
Yes, to Mother Nature. I would like to ask, what are your thoughts on my theory? Men are more related to logos and women to eros. How do you feel about that?
Mother Nature, you're muted.
Thank you,
Good.
Dr. Jung, for asking that question. We all know that you have had your insights that have been marvelous on so many fronts, but your understanding of what men and women both have is a little fucked up. Because, you know, we all have, he talked you know about the tension of opposites. So if Eros just belongs to one side of the human life and logos to the other, where's the tension of opposites for each of us? We both have to have logos and eros. And I think it's, you know, you were heading in the right direction for understanding that and taking seriously the feminine and women in your discussion, but you didn't quite go far enough. But then there are all the women of Jungian orientation, and we've been working very hard to follow up on your topics. So we're working on it.
This is good. This is one good reason to have a panel, because we have more different ideas coming, not just one. Mother Nature, your chance. Would you like to ask a question of anyone on the panel?
No, actually, I'm not interested in listening to people. I want people to listen to me.
Okay, quite said. Hermes Trismegistus, would you like to ask a question of anyone?
Yes, I would like to ask Maya. I have an opening for a Sora Mystica. I'm wondering if you're available. Your words are such sweet nectar.
Oh, thank you so much, Hermes. I will think about it and get back to you.
Thank you.
All right.
You're welcome.
Maya, do you have a question of anyone on the panel?
Let me see. I guess I would almost like to ask everyone something. This is very difficult. So, Marie-Louise, can I ask her something?
Yes, absolutely.
Have you talked to anyone in particular since you've been on the other side?
I wasn't quite prepared for your question. I've been out in the garden and I seem to have gotten things on my hands. I haven't, that is one of the times that I spend, and I'm speaking with nature and speaking like, I had occasion to walk past our pond. It is so good to get out from my study, and the dragonflies have arrived. Dr. Jung, he is in the air there. But the dragonflies, they eat bugs and mosquitoes, and they eat them all. So they're very charming and on top of being very useful. And there was probably the toad. She is always there resting, aren't they sweet? In Germany, it's called Unka. It doesn't croak, it makes cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. Very, very delicate. You hear them from a long distance in the wood. They go cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. They do it mostly in the mating time. It's always exciting in the spring. You wander out on a warm day and hear the first toad. They are like little human beings. They have little hands and little feet. That's why it's so nice about them. They are not so inhuman. They are really like little men, but they don't talk back. But Maya, I believe I've gone way off topic, so I will stop there.
Thank you.
I would just say, and I think the audience might agree that Marie, you seem very much alive. Okay, I have one question I want to ask the archetypal dairy farmer, because as a Frenchman, we're really like big on our cheese over here. In Wisconsin, they only have one kind of cheese?
Oh, no, we got all kinds of cheese. We have a lot of artisanal cheese makers. And I think we make some of the best cheese in the world. I had an old French girlfriend, and I tasted some of the French cheese. It was pretty good, but I'll still stay with the Wisconsin cheeses.
Okay, great. We're moving to the concluding remarks now. I'm going to go through the same order pretty much. Archetypal dairy farmer, would you like to make a 1 minute final addition to the panel? Whatever you want to say?
No, I'll just be very brief, but in these very difficult times, I think what we have to do is eat more cheese and drink more good beer.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Sigmund Freud, do you have anything you would like to impart before we end?
Yes. Yeah, I should say. I'm going to adopt your philosophy, Albert, which is, so what? That's it.
I think you'll be happier for it. Okay. All right. Carl, Dr. Carl Gustav Jung, do you have any parting words?
Yeah, I wanted to say something about America. America is a country of a nervous disease. In very nervous disease, there's a psychic element. Your American mind is very direct. It is very logical. Your great enterprises, your great buildings. You show you are learned to think, to reason, to abstractions. This is a wonderful country, but it has a dark side to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Mother Nature, do you have any parting comments?
Yes, Mr. Camus. Yes, Mr. Camus. I have one thing that I just want to say to all of the other panels. Just remember, I don't need people. People need me. I will continue to evolve whatever you do, however you treat carbon deposits and the air and the water. I will work around and I'll just flood and burn and blow wind. Well, I will continue to evolve. The question is, will you?
Thank you, Mother Nature. Hermes Trismegistus, any final comments from you, sir?
Well, I don't usually do this, but I just wanted to show you that it is possible to create the stone. Takes a lot of care and feeding. You have to take care of it. It takes care of you in the process. Other than that, anybody care to buy a gold bracelet? It was once made of lead. Thanks for listening to an old man.
Thank you. Nietzsche is still not here. We're still going to try to get him to do his 2 cents and have a final comment from Nietzsche. But last but not least, Maya Angelou, would you like to leave any parting ideas with us?
Well, I've been noticing, Alberto, that you have the pipe. And I was wondering, while I still have a little time left, if maybe I could just have a little puff of your pipe and maybe a little sherry to go along with it.
I'd be willing to accommodate both. Right after we finish this out, I have lots of good sherry and I have some good tobacco. So
okay, wonderful.
Be glad to.
Thank you.
Okay. Maria Louise Franz, would you like to say anything in parting?
Albert, the committee, yes, I would like to say, the committee has been working so hard on this important gala event for many months, surveying this community to respond to its needs. And yes, I would say that where there is a deep archetypal experience, which is also an emotional experience, there is a spontaneous need for acting it out, for having a ritual. I would say that today, and I believe that Dr. Jung would agree, that on this important gala occasion, there is an indication that a profound archetypal experience and need for ritual has arisen. It's like the hippies, in America in the 1960s when they would get together for what they called happenings. That was an archetypal response. But finally, I would say Dr. Jung would be so very honored by all the creative hard work that has been accomplished. Thank you, your panelists, to bring this event together. It is a form of active imagination. I just noticed that my little dog has just come into my consulting room just now. When my dog appears in the room, I have learned that to mean that I've neglected my feeling function, which is my inferior function, and he is telling me to pay attention to that realm. It is always important to work on your feeling function. So thank you all for coming. It has been a fine experience.
Okay, if I can get all of us to wave good night. It's not like live Saturday night from the Jung Institute, but we're doing it by Zoom Saturday night from the Jung Institute. Thank you all for joining us. Wave goodbye, panelists, and we will see you in the next whatever.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you all.
Bye. Bye.
Take care.
Nice to your shadow. Shadow is your friend. What you see in everybody else is yours in the end. So stop your squawking. Let your fingers do the walking and take a look. It's all in our book. We've got Freud, Jung, and Adler. Jung is best of all. Freud was too sexy and Atlas was too small. Come on, join our club. The small fee is the rub, but you never get rooked. We've got a hell of a lot of books. Welcome to our library, can see it in your face. All the knowledge you could want is waiting at the gate. We've got all the writings on the soul to individuate. What's the sin? You can only win. Christ, we let the human in. Self is a center, circumference around. the ego would like you to think that it hates all the sounds. Shut up all the noise and come on, girls and boys, to the library nook and read all of the books. Please read all of the books. We got a hell of a lot of books. So it's all in